Okay, we're live. So hi there and welcome to Ask Cam. And this evening we're going to be talking about money and debt. So all things money that you might have queries about. If you have tuned into one of our live streams before, you'll know my face. I'm Rosie, the Partnership and Communications Lead here at Citizens Advice Manchester. And I am joined by the lovely Lynn and lovely Ali, who are two of our advisors here at Citizens Advice. Don't know if you guys just want to introduce yourselves a little bit about what you do. So Lynn first.
Okay, yes, well, I'm a money advice caseworker here at Citizens Advice. So we advise people by different modes. At the moment, since we've had the pandemic, it's been primarily by telephone and digital means. But prior to that, we had our face-to-face service, and that was my permanent base. But we've been able to, I think, reach a lot more people with the developments that we've had, as a result of the pandemic as well, and expanding the modes of digital access. So we have clients referred to us who need advice on dealing with their debts, and sometimes just with financial capability issues as well in terms of budgeting and so on. So we advise them and help support them, provide assistance as well for them to achieve whatever their chosen debt strategy is, or to help them self-assist.
Great, thank you. And Ali?
Hi, I'm Ali. God, I've worn many hats. I used to manage our debt advice service. I then moved over and now manage the welfare benefit and a bit of energy service. But within that, we also do some debt advice, a bit of employment as well. It's a great team, similar to Lynn. Since the pandemic, we've obviously tried to diversify and try and find different avenues to reach people and to ensure that the people who need the advice are getting it.
Fantastic. So we have got a lot of knowledge in the room. So that's always a really good start, I think. And so we'll kick off. Like I said, we are talking all things money and debt related today. So whether or not that's just you are having issues with your finances, you've not yet got yourself into debt, but you are sort of feeling quite like it's the strain of trying to keep up with a lot of bills. Or if you have maybe fallen behind with a few payments, you want a little bit of advice on how you might get back on track, any kind of quick tips. Obviously, what we should always caveat that is all this with is debt advice is complicated and is very personal. And so what we may need you to do is get in touch with our fantastic teams further down the line. But obviously, we will try and answer any questions that you might have here and now. So if you are watching, whichever stream you're watching on this evening, if you want to comment below with your question at any point during the feed, please do, and we will do our best to answer your questions. But just to kind of open the conversation, I guess, coronavirus obviously is the topic on everybody's lips at all times, because what else do we talk about these days? With money, have we seen changes in people coming to us for advice around debt and money?
Yes, I would say so. It's virtually everyone's been impacted, by the coronavirus and the lockdown. I would say we've had a big increase in self-employed people getting in touch with us, people that may have literally found their work completely dried up since the lockdown, and different sorts of issues, people that may not have had any difficulty in meeting their credit commitments in the past, but suddenly found themselves with no income, potentially having to claim, universal credit, which can be a bit of a minefield, dealing with furlough pay, and, just trying to kind of navigate the new landscape and without falling, too far into arrears, particularly with priority debts. There have been some positive changes that were made, like the government added the £20 per week benefit upgrading for universal credit from last April, and that's been extended until October this year. And they also added the £250 extra for council tax support recipients, which for a great deal of people may have actually met their liability for the year. So that was positive, but that's finished now. But in terms of what I had seen, different trends in terms of clients getting in touch with us, it was more along the lines of people that hadn't necessarily had problems before. They might have just been managing, just on the verge, but all it took was, having an extra £10 less per week. That could make the difference between them, meeting their, their repayments. And with furlough pay, there are a lot of employers that weren't able to meet that 20% difference, and 20% of your wage gone can make a massive difference. Whereas a lot of benefit recipients may have actually found themselves in some cases to be a little bit better off because of the uprating, and then making a little bit options that they didn't used to have that they may have had. And also we had some help in terms of the FCA and so on with payment holidays. So people could have payment holidays of 3 months for certain types of debts, which made a big difference. And I think I found that a lot of the time people were coming to us later on in the year, say late summer and things, when their payment holidays had expired, because they may have been able to self-assist up to that point. Yeah. So, yes.
Yeah, I think I'd completely echo a lot of what Lynn has said. And I think what we're going to be seeing, or we feel we're going to be seeing going forward, is as some of these measures come to an end, which quite a few of them are ending now, and people may have taken advantage of the payment holidays and they've felt there's no pressure to make payments. Now, the time has come to start making those payments. So, for example, if someone has decided to take a mortgage payment holiday and they've taken 3 or 6 months holiday on the payments, they still have to pay that money back. And what happens, you then have interest added to that. So it means that when you start to pay, you may well end up having to pay a little bit more than you were before, or looking to capitalize the arrears that you've accrued and add it to the payment. So you end up with a longer term for your mortgage. But yes, I think for a lot of people, even those on furlough, just losing 20% of their income is has a big impact on them. And it's just trying to find ways that you can manage. So there are many people who have always worked, they've always earned, a reasonable wage, and then suddenly they kind of lose 20% of their income, and they find that they're struggling. And many of them have never claimed any sort of benefit. So they're having to, find the way around the benefit system and figure out what we're allowed to claim. So we have seen an increase in people like that coming through, definitely.
Yeah. Absolutely. And so I'm just going to...
Oh, sorry, go ahead.
Sorry, I was just going to quickly jump in before we sort of maybe come back to you, Lynn, but that we have had a question come in from Val. So thank you, Val. Quick off the mark, asking a question, and it is a bit more of an employment-based question, but I think you maybe will have a bit of an understanding. She's asking, can her son's boss, stop his holiday pay because he's been on furlough? So how does furlough interact with holiday pay?
I can't be 100% on this off the top of my head because I'm not an employment specialist, but I don't believe that your holiday pay was impacted by being on furlough. I can't say 100%, but we do have our Citizens Advice website that information should be available on there as well. If they want to go onto the website and click the work section. And I believe that we have a whole section about that's sort of COVID specific as well that addresses furlough issues. Mm-hmm. But I wouldn't like to give a definitive answer on that without knowing that off the top of my head.
That's fair enough. I will work to put up the appropriate link along the bottom of our screen as we speak. But there you go, Val. So that's sort of in theory, or we believe that it shouldn't have been impacted. We would recommend that you take a look at our self-help advice pages. And then should your son need any sort of further clarification, if he's still not 100% sure, or maybe just needs a bit of guidance on how to enforce that with his boss and how to sort of actually have that conversation, by all means do get him to give our advice line team a call, and they should be able to sort of help him with finding his way through that system. I think.
Absolutely, because he's furloughed employee, he is still employed, so he hasn't lost his rights as an employee just because he's on furlough pay. And gov.uk will probably also have some helpful information on that as well.
Absolutely. Wonderful. Thank you very much. Lynn, I interrupted you very rudely. So what were you about to say?
No, it's absolutely fine. I was just saying in terms of what Ali was saying in terms of it being, people who may have been new to the benefits system, having to learn to navigate. And there were also things involved around, say that, the self-employment income support scheme, where self-employed people were able to claim grants or payments from HMRC. And I believe HMRC contacted them to say if they were eligible. But depending on when that was received, that could actually have a negative impact on someone's universal credit claim. So literally sometimes the difference of having that money come in on one day as opposed to a different day could mean an entire month's lost universal credit. And there were these things that really, people wouldn't have had any way of knowing. And unfortunately, by the time they come to see us, it was usually often done, but at least it helped us for people who might have contacted us that were prior to that stage, prior to getting that payment, where we could try to give them some guidance around the best time to, have that be received.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you. And I've just managed to get the link to our advice and sort of self-help pages listed at the bottom of our screen there. So Val, again, if you do want to use that, then do feel free. So I think we've obviously sort of touched on payment holidays as well. And do you feel then that people maybe have put off coming to us for support because there's been a bit of a stopgap solution, I guess, and then we sort of do you feel like we're maybe starting to see that coming through now?
Yeah, I'd probably say definitely. I think not just for people who could take mortgage holidays, but you had measures put in place for people who are on benefits as well. So if they had deductions for overpayments, those were stopped for a period of time. What's happened is I think a lot of people have got to the point where they thought, well, I don't really need to do anything at this point in time. I've got a bit of breathing space, but obviously that's now coming to an end. And we did definitely see a bit of a decline in the numbers coming through for debt advice, especially when the initial measures were introduced. But that is starting to increase now, the numbers. So we're getting more people coming through. And I think, as I said previously, as more of the measures come to an end, the numbers will continue to increase. But in addition to the usual cohort of people who may have usually sought advice, we're probably going to get a new sector, a new cohort who are now having to deal with, as we said, the payment holidays or the results of any decisions they may have made financially during lockdown.
Yeah, absolutely. And thinking about those people who say these new people who may never really have worried about money before, or with at least managing, like they might not have been like super comfortable, but they were managing and they were getting by. If they haven't yet tipped into sort of falling behind with payments, but they are sort of starting to feel that those, like making those payments each month or each week or however frequently is becoming a bit more difficult, can they still contact our money advice teams? Is that a good solution for them?
Well, absolutely. Yeah. I mean, to be honest, it's so much easier to address things prior to the stage where people are starting to get into, serious levels of arrears, defaulting, credit files affected by that, perhaps even, letter before legal action and court claims and then bailiff action that follows that. It's much easier for us to be able to, work with them and address things before it gets to that point. So we would very much welcome people getting in touch if they feel that they're getting to that point where they're coming up maybe to the edge of something that they're not going to be able to manage with, because we can look at, what not just what their income and expenditure is, their household circumstances. A big part of what we do is income maximization. So for myself personally, before we start going through someone's income and expenditure, we'll do a benefit check, gather background details about their household just to see if, based on what they're telling us, some things are triggered straight away. I've had a client quite recently, living with an adult, daughter that had a serious a skin condition where they might have been eligible for the WaterSure scheme that most water companies offer. And so things like that, when you start getting a bit of background, straight away you've got things at the back of your head. Maybe we can look to get a reduction in that there. If someone's on a low income and they meet the criteria, there are social tariffs with energy suppliers, with water companies. You have lots of areas around not just doing a benefit check to see if there's any benefit entitlement, but things like if someone does say they're not on a benefit or they don't have a health condition where they can get free prescriptions, but they have a regular prescription that they get, even if it's just one per month, that person's going to be better off getting an annual prepayment certificate. And that's £10.81 per month for 10 months out of the year. So you don't have to pay up front. I know that you have to pay up front for kind of quarterly certificates and things. And people might say, well, I don't have enough money to pay that up front. But you can literally, it saves you money even if you only have one prescription per month or every 4 weeks to get that annual certificate. And then, things that if somebody has 2 per month, you could be saving them a couple of £100 a year just by making, a change like that. So we do like to look through, identify if somebody might be available, say for the warm home discount scheme that most energy suppliers offer, that can be £140 off of your electricity bill if you meet the criteria. So and even just going through someone's budget to see, because sometimes people will come to us and they think, I know I just can't manage this. And when you actually go through the budget, there might be money there that's available, but they just haven't, may have been spending a little bit money here or there or on eBay. There's a little bit different in lockdown. It's not like saying, going to, Starbucks and getting a coffee or something like that, but just pointing out and going through things and saying, well, this is what it's showing, that you have available. What do you think? Do you think that would be something you could keep an eye on? And that's the ideal situation, really, if you get kind of somebody whose financial difficulties is really down to budgeting, because then they're able to manage their situation just by, maybe keeping a weekly diary of what they spend, things like that. So yes, I say we would very much encourage people. You don't have to already be in arrears to get in touch with us. The sooner the better. And especially for things where you could have like bailiff action involved, you want to really try to get the advice, prior to that time.
Yeah, I think what people need to, or what we need to get across to a lot of people, is that we offer financial capability advice as well. So as part of the process of giving debt advice, it's also about looking at how you're spending your money. And I think similar to what Lynn said, a lot of us we may potentially do a big shop, for example, but then we think of it as, well, this is what I've spent. But then every single week they're buying milk, perishable, and they don't think about that people may be having takeaway as well a few times a week, and it all adds up. So it's a very good practice to spend some time looking through your bank statements and just seeing, you could do it over a month, over a couple of months, where have I spent my money, and then filling in a budget sheet. There's a lot of them online that are really good that you can access, and it's just going through what you're spending each week, each month, and looking at ways you can cut back. So we encourage people, if your insurance policies are coming to an end, shop around, see if you can get it cheaper elsewhere. The same applies to your fuel costs as well. Can you get it cheaper elsewhere? So it's just little small changes, and you tend to find that you're able to save money just by doing things like that.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's, and certainly, as you say, then that idea that actually it's much easier to help you before you necessarily start thinking about like, oh, actually I've got myself behind. And I think sometimes we're guilty of sort of advertising our services as we deal with welfare benefits, debt, housing, and actually that means that somebody thinks they have to be in debt before they can seek our support. And like you say, it's money advice, or it's debt and money advice. So we will do all of the sides of that, and we're absolutely here to kind of help you like get yourself back on track. It's not just about finding a one-off solution. It's about how do we make things easier for you kind of long term, like going forward, how do we sort of get better practices or yeah, I know that really my spending habits, I'm sure I could make some savings somewhere if I sat down and went through my bank statements a little bit more carefully.
We all can.
So, exactly, we can all do with a little bit of budgeting support on occasionally. Lynn, you touched on at the beginning the fact that the council, initially there was a council tax support kind of payment put in place at the start of coronavirus for last year, yes, but that's not in place this year. I think it's, firstly, sort of almost, why is it so important to pay council tax and make sure that that payment is kind of arranged, and without that support available, again, like what might people be able to do? What might their options be in terms of keeping up with their council tax payments?
Sure. Yeah, council tax is what we call, it's a priority expense. So it's really important that it's paid, because ultimately, if you don't pay your council tax, it could lead to having your benefits attached, having your wages attached, having bailiffs coming round, which nobody wants. And ultimately, if you really ignored it for some time, you can actually lose your liberty. So it really is important to keep on top of that. What we would look at if someone thinks that they're struggling with the council tax, we want to look, first of all, are there any discounts that they could claim? Like there's a single person discount if you're the only adult in the property, or if you're with other adults, but they are, say, full-time students, or they're otherwise exempt. There are different forms of exemptions. Then you can get 25% off of your council tax, and you don't have to be in receipt of any means tested benefits for that. It's not means tested at all. That's just the single adult discount. So that's one thing straight away. People can look at whether there are potentially, like, say, any other exemptions. If you have any full-time students in the house, in advanced education, then they could be exempt, and that might help benefit you in some way. If someone has a disability that causes them to have to use another room in the house apart from their bedroom for the management of their disability, they could look to apply for a disability discount, and that will generally knock you down one band. But if you're in the lowest band, then they take off a percentage of that, so that can reduce your bill. If your payments are being made over 10 months, because that's the default position of most local authorities, is to put you on a 10-month payment plan, you get February and March off. But really, that's, unless you can really, for certain you can manage that, we find that it tends to be much more manageable to pay over 12 months, because then you have lower amount each month starting out with. Because by the time you get to February or March, if you have those higher payments, you might already be in arrears and find yourself in a situation where you could be looking at additional costs being added, because when you fall behind with your council tax and you lose the right to pay by installments, then you get something called a liability order, and that costs, it's $79.50, I think, in Manchester at the moment. It varies from local authority to local authority, but that's your debt gone up potentially quite significantly as well, depending on how much you owed. So there are things, and again, going back to looking at the budgeting advice, looking at your financial capability skills, there may have been a prioritization taking place. You might have been giving a priority to pay for expenses that actually don't have those consequences of non-payment like the council tax does. And by putting together, say, looking at your income and expenditure, we can look and say, well, there's a bit of a high area here. Is that something you think you might be able to budget down on? By doing so, that can allow you to, meet your council tax. So it is, like Ali was saying, very much about, helping to strengthen financial capability skills, making sure people understand, the difference between priority and non-priority debts. So, but for the people who have found that they find themselves in council tax arrears, do get in touch with us because we definitely want to advise you, particularly about bailiff issues. And
I think the only thing I'd probably add to that most people don't know is that you can actually contact your council. Your council has discretion to reduce your council tax bill. They have discretion to clear your council tax bill as well for you. They do this quite rarely, obviously exceptional circumstances, but we would always recommend, if you're really struggling, get in touch with us and we would be able to help you to make that request.
Yeah. Great. That's really good to know, because as you say, like, those sorts of things that people just don't realise are available to them. And like, certainly I knew about the single person discount for council tax, but I don't think I would have known about all of those other elements that could potentially get your council tax reduced. So again, it's if you are unsure and you think you maybe would be able to want to sort of look and explore your options in terms of whether or not there is a way to reduce your council tax bill that you might not have known about before, again, get in touch with us. I'm going to pop up our phone number and our website on the bottom of the screen again now, because again, we have, while we do sort of work predominantly over the phone, we do also have a lot of digital services. So you can get in touch with us using video advice. You can use Facebook Messenger. We have WhatsApp. We have a number of ways that you can get in touch with us. So whatever sort of fits your circumstances better, do please make sure that you come and sort of find us wherever you can, telephone and digital service wise. And one day we do hope very much to be back in the community, but obviously at the moment we do have to protect the safety of both our advisors and of the public. Yeah, so with council tax now, again, things like bailiffs, I know we get a lot of calls around bailiff action and sort of bailiffs possibly telling people that they have powers that they don't have, particularly. Yes. So firstly, at the moment, I know there was a ban on enforcement action. So yes. Enforcement agents weren't actually allowed to go out and visit. Is that still in place, or are bailiffs and enforcement agents now allowed to visit properties?
That's right. And funnily enough, we did actually see, I would say that in the years that I've been with Citizens Advice, bailiffs are probably the number one issue that we tend to get for debt advice. It often for council tax, but also for other things, parking tickets and things like that. But we actually saw a drop in those because they weren't coming out. It wasn't safe for them to become, going to people's properties. So there was a hold on bailiff action. So those queries dropped off quite significantly. As of August last year, that was lifted. So they are actually able to come to people's houses. Now, in practice, I haven't actually encountered any enforcement agents entering people's property. I think the guidance that they have at the moment is still not to enter the property, but they can come to your house. But you absolutely do not have to let them in. Don't let them in. Keep your door locked. Don't let them in. Bailiffs will never tell you what the full story, basically, because nobody would ever, deal with them, which wouldn't necessarily be a bad thing. But bailiffs enforcing council tax arrears, for instance, and county court judgments and penalty charges from the council and things like that, they have to get what's called peaceful entry or peaceable entry into your property in order to return and force entry at another time. And that peaceful entry is generally through an open door, an unlocked door, or if you let them in. So if you don't do any of those things, they can't come through your windows. They did used to be able to, but that changed a few years ago with the legislation. It has to be through a normal means of entry. So if you're worried or you've had a bailiff warning letter saying that they're coming, keep your door locked. Don't let them in. Make sure that that it's locked. Don't have it open unlocked, and don't invite them in. And if they don't ever get that peaceful entry, they won't be able to come back and force entry then, no matter what they say to you. But they miss out that peaceful entry bit. They just say, we're going to come back with a locksmith or the police or whatever it may be, and we're going to remove your goods. And it can be quite intimidating. And one of the worst things is shows like, certain bailiff show that's out there, can't pay, we'll take it away and things. People watch these shows and they think that that's normal, that bailiffs can do all of these things. Those shows tend to be around magistrate court fines being enforced and evictions, and those bailiffs, when enforcing those types of debts, because it's not the particular bailiff, it's just the type of debt that they're enforcing, there are greater powers of entry that come with those sorts of things. So they can force entry on the first visit. So don't get any magistrate court fines. And if you find yourself going into rent arrears or mortgage arrears, please do get in touch with us so we can hopefully, help you, guide you through not letting it get to that point. But your council tax, bailiffs, penalty charges, etc., they can't just force entry unless they have the peaceful entry. So basically, you have the control over whether they get into your property. And I think that's quite empowering to kind of turn it around a bit, instead of thinking this person's going to come in and kick my door in, which they're not supposed to do. They're not supposed to use only reasonable force. And that is usually with a locksmith. So sometimes just actually knowing about your rights, and this information is available, it's just knowing where to find it, can be a tremendous source of relief, and just letting people know that no, they're not going to be able to just come in and kick my door in and take my things away. And but like I say, the bailiffs, it's not in their interest to let people know that. So please, if any kind of threat of bailiff action, please do, get in touch with us, and we'll be happy to advise you. Even sometimes we'll get people that get in touch with us when there's literally somebody knocking at the door. But for the time being, just to go back to your question, Rosie, they can, if they want to, they are attending properties now. But as far as I'm aware, I haven't heard of anybody actually entering properties, because it's not safe for them to do it. It's not safe for people, the people that they're visiting either. But they're sort of hand delivering the letters, and if they can speak to you, from outside, they will try that. But just don't feel any pressure. You don't have to speak to them if you don't feel comfortable with that. Just remember, you can keep your door locked. Don't let them in. Then get in touch with us, and then we can look to address it, because it wouldn't be something you'd want to ignore. It would be time to get advice on that once you have the bailiffs coming, but ideally before it gets to that stage.
Lynn, you might be able to answer this better than I can. Have you had instances of cars being, clamped by bailiffs since they started attending again?
I haven't personally, but I know that we have had that, within our team, that they have gone back to doing that, because that's the easy option for them. If someone, yes, good point. If somebody has goods outside their property, as long as if they're not locked up, basically, if you owned a car, for instance, and it wasn't in a locked garage, if it was on your drive or it's on a public highway, then bailiffs would unfortunately be able to what we call take that into control, which is basically seizing it. They usually clamp it, they immobilize it, and they want you to pay the money. They don't really want to have to take the car away or remove goods. They want the money, but that's not to say that they wouldn't do that, if you didn't pay. So if it's really important to get advice urgently if that situation happens. But if you find yourself where you're under the threat of bailiff action, or they're coming and you do have a vehicle, it's really best to keep that parked someplace else away from your property securely. If it's on someone else's drive, they're not allowed to touch it. But if it's on your drive or it's on a public highway, so if it's on the road, just outside your house, they can take that, unfortunately. But if you had a neighbor or a family member or someone that would let you park that, you could park on their drive, then they wouldn't be able to touch that. Most people don't tend to have a lot of valuables outside apart from a car, but yes, yeah, they I don't think that ever actually stopped, even with the lockdown. There was enforcement that stopped for quite a while, but that's been back since August. So yes, those things are fair game again, unfortunately, vehicles, but only vehicles that belong to you. Yes. So if you had a Motability car, if you had a car on hire purchase, you don't own it yet until that last payment's made. If you somebody else owns the car, but they let you drive it, that wouldn't be subject to being able to be taken into control by the bailiffs. But they wouldn't necessarily know that. So what we would say is make sure that you have your documentation to hand in case something should happen with that. But just because you drive a vehicle, if you don't own it, then the bailiffs can't take it. So again, get in touch with us if you're at risk of any kind of bailiff action.
Yeah, I think that's all really, really useful. I think that again, that some of that bailiff information was one of the first bits of info I learned when I came to Citizens Advice. Obviously, I'm not in an advice role, but I do pick up like little nuggets of information here and there, and that was one of the first things that I gleaned from the teams at Citizens Advice, because obviously it's such a frequent question, and that idea that we see the sort of televised version of bailiffs, whether or not that's like a reality TV program, or even if it's in like a drama program, that is often how they sort of depict it, as someone's breaking down your door and they're going to sort of come in. And obviously that is really scary. So when someone gets that letter to say we're going to come to your property, that's obviously what a lot of people will be thinking is going to happen. So that's really great to have that little bit of reassurance. So if you are in that position, and you would like a little bit of assistance in terms of how you obviously now know that you don't have to let them in, and you don't necessarily have to believe everything that they tell you. But if you do want to get a little bit of advice in advance, then our advisors are very much here to kind of support with that.
We are also, Rosie, if I could just mention, just while I'm thinking of it as well, that often, if most of the bailiffs are working on a commission basis as well. So if you're not paying them, they're not getting paid, and they will lie. They will say whatever they need to say to try to get you to pay money. So sometimes you'll get bailiffs, say with council tax, that will say, if you don't pay, you're going to jail. We're going to make sure. I mean, I've had the things that I've heard that the bailiffs have said is just amazing. They don't have any say in that whatsoever. Yes, if you don't pay your council tax, there is a threat of loss of liberty, but it's way down the line, and you would have a committal summons, and it doesn't happen very rare. It happens quite rarely, I should say, not very often. And if you engage with the council, you're really not looking at that happening. But the bailiffs will say things like that. They'll tell people, that as though it's up to them to decide whether somebody's going to, have committal proceedings and so on. So my advice would be to not try not to feel intimidated, and take what they're saying largely. You can often take it with a grain of salt. There's often some truth mixed in with that, but it's been, extrapolated out. The fact that yes, you could, potentially lose your liberty for council tax arrears doesn't actually have anything to do with the bailiffs. The council doesn't ask the bailiff's opinion on whether they're going to go for committal proceedings or anything like that, but bailiffs will often present as though they do, like if you don't pay them, you're going to jail sort of situation. So just, and that can be really scary. So I just wanted to throw that in there as well.
Thank you. Yeah, that's really helpful. Just to sort of point out to anybody watching that we are now entering into the sort of the final eight minutes, I think, on countdown of the session. So if you do have any questions at all for Lynn or Ali, please do type them into the comments box before we finish. But just to kind of, so then almost in sort of coming towards a conclusion, are there things, we've obviously touched on sort of like those really key things about sort of payments and falling behind and things that people might be worried about when it comes to debt. But Ali, I'm thinking you particularly obviously have a sort of income maximisation often slant to the work that your team do. And Lynn obviously coming at it from a debt point of view. When people are sort of talking to us about money, are there things at the moment that you would want to make sure people know, if that's not too broad a question, I guess?
I think it's quite broad. However, I think for us, there are a lot of people out there who don't actually know what they may or may not be entitled to benefits. They may not have a clear understanding of commitments and the rules and regulations around credit, and if you then default on payments. So I think for me, I do find it slightly frustrating that it's income maximization and financial capability isn't a skill that is kind of taught to people from a young age. I think that's something that fundamentally they need to learn. I have a daughter who's going to university and said to me the other day, I don't know anything about paying bills. I don't know what bills you have to pay when you move away from home. So for me, that comes as a bit of a surprise. And I think it's just about education, promotion. It's knowing that there's information out there, there's help out there. And over the next year, I think we'll still be seeing obviously the results of COVID and some of the decisions people have made whilst we've been on lockdown. And it's just getting that message out there that if you are struggling in any way at all, you need to, look for help. There is help available. Come to Citizens Advice. We can advise you in several areas, if it's employment, if it's debt, if it's even immigration, welfare benefits. So there's help out there. And we tend to find that, for example, people in debt, just telling somebody you're in debt and someone saying to you, I can help you. There are options. There are solutions. It takes a big weight off people's minds. And we all know that debt is linked quite strongly to mental health as well. So the stress of worrying about your finances, how you're going to pay your bill next month, that's something that we can help you with. So just come and see us.
Yeah, absolutely. I think also just an opportunity to plug there that your daughter really should go on one of our Switched On Young People's Energy workshops.
Yes, she should.
To help her manage her energy bills. At least that's one set of bills that she will know how to pay. But yeah, you're quite right in sort of that connection to mental health. And obviously we know that coronavirus in so many ways has impacted on many people's mental health overall, but then to have that added worry about finances. And we know that obviously, again, finances are one of those things that we just don't talk about enough in society. It's a bit of a taboo subject, and we don't tell our friends that we're in debt, and we don't. So it's a burden that we're carrying by ourselves.
Yes.
And obviously that can weigh very much on your health, mental health and well-being, and that can then have a knock-on effect onto your physical health, all sorts of things. So absolutely, all of our advice is completely free, it's confidential, it's independent, it's impartial. We are not going to tell anybody else about your financial comings and goings. No. And we are going to, offer that a listening ear, and again to sort of offer that reassurance, I think often is what is so valuable from the fantastic work that you guys do all the time. Lynn, did you have anything that you sort of wanted to summarize with, I guess?
I was going to say, I know it's really great what you were saying, Ali. Just that, yeah, absolutely. Sometimes just actually taking that step to acknowledge that I need a bit of help with this, and I need to talk to someone about it. Or it may be someone who's actually been like not opening their post for quite some time, and things are actually a bit worse than what they thought. That's what we're here for. And taking that first step is just the best thing that you can do, because we can look. And one of the nice things, I don't think that this is necessarily the case in many other areas of advice. With debt advice, there are just so many possibilities of how you can deal with something. Yes. Somebody might have 30 different debts, and we can go through, and there may be a different strategy for dealing with each of them. But we know we can work through people's priority debts, their non-priority debts, what can be negotiated on, what sort of debts are regulated by the Financial Conduct Authority, where there's an actual code of guidance that creditors have to abide by, and they won't necessarily tell you that. But if you're aware of that, you can ask for instance, if you need a 30-day hold because you're seeking debt advice, you can ask most creditors, most sort of credit commitments that you may have, loans, credit cards, catalogs, etc. And you can, if you're seeking debt advice, you can ask them for a hold, and they're generally required to give you a 30-day hold to allow you time to receive debt advice and see how you're moving forward with that. But we can often take something that might look like something that's really daunting for someone, or kind of a messy situation, and actually break it down, and hopefully by the end of the call somebody has a clear set of agreed actions that they might need to take place to help themselves and to move toward a strategy of dealing with those debts.
Wonderful. Thanks, Lynn. It's fantastic. It's fantastic work that goes on around money advice, citizens advice. I'm always very much, I'm in awe of all the work that everybody does every day. I think it's fantastic. But just sort of from my head is often on energy advice, because I am very involved with a lot of our energy projects. But just in terms of sort of managing your finances, we're aware that, or you may not be aware, that the price cap for your energy bills has risen from the 1st of April, and that a lot of people are going to be facing sort of around about £96, I think, per year in the increase in their bills if they are on sort of monthly or quarterly direct debit sort of payments, or if you're on a prepayment meter, it could be around sort of 86, I think is the figure, but I wouldn't want to be too sure about that. It's definitely 80 something. So again, that's a payment that suddenly you might be, and you may already have seen your energy costs increase because of being at home more through lockdown and running a lot of devices, particularly with homeschooling and things like that. We do have energy advice teams who are here to help, again, with energy arrears, or with just sort of some proactive advice about how can you bring your bills down? How can you maybe switch supplier or get onto a better tariff that may offer you a better deal? And look at other financial support, again, that your energy supplier may provide, and get you onto other support registers. So we're looking at particularly sort of priority support registers with both your supplier and then also with Electricity North West as well. So we're doing some great work with them. So again, if you are struggling with your energy costs, please do get in touch. But again, any kind of costs, whatever it is, whatever the bill, whatever the payment, do contact us to get support.
I think the only thing I'd say is that's the beauty of Citizens Advice, is that, similar to what Lynn said, when people come along with debts, there's usually other issues as well. So they may have issues with housing, it might be a result of an employment issue. And the great thing is that we can offer you advice in all those different areas and try and deal with all of them. So it's a holistic approach. So don't suffer in silence, get some help.
Yeah. Absolutely. Well, thank you both so much for your time this evening. It's really appreciated. For those people who are sort of watching back on repeat, or if you've just tuned in a little bit late, I've just popped up our phone number and website again. If you do want to get in touch with us, please do. We're holding these live streams approximately once every couple of weeks. We haven't set the topic for the next one yet, so if you have any ideas and there is a burning sort of issue that you would like us to kind of cover in the next one, please do drop a comment below. Even if you're watching back on repeat, we should be able to pick up your comments, so let us know what you would like us to cover. But for now, thank you very much to everyone who's tuned in. Thanks again, Lynn and Ali, for your time. And I hope everybody has a lovely evening. So good night.
Bye.